Public safety meeting for the City of Hudson to order on July 17th, 2019. And I will just first of all say apologize for the mix-up of times and when we were meeting. It just kind of got a little hectic with the holidays. So roll call, please.
Alderperson Alms.
Here.
Alderperson Hall.
Here.
Alderperson Morset.
Here. Minutes from our regular meeting of June 13th.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Number 3, parking. Discussion possible action to restrict parking on Commercial Street east of 2nd Street on the north side. Jeff, but I know Mike Miraz is here to speak to it, so.
Yes. Yep. So, good afternoon. My name is Mike Miraz. I'm the Director of Public Works for the City of Hudson. In my short time here, I've observed a problem area in the downtown area to deal with parking. And I know whenever parking comes up in the City of Hudson, especially in the downtown area, it's a hot topic, hot button issue. So I wanted to vet this in the various committees and get their recommendations and approvals before we even consider moving forward with this recommendation. So the recommendation is Commercial Street, east of 2nd. It's going up the hill to the Williams parking lot here. Basically, I've noticed on numerous occasions where two vehicles would come head to head and there's not enough room to pass by, causing one of them to back up the street or back onto 2nd. And then doing a little more further research, there's been cases where some of the vehicles have been hit by fire engines from time to time. And then in the wintertime, our snow plows have a hard time getting down that street as well, even though there is no parking allowed from November to March. There's still some times where vehicles will park there and not causing us to delay snow removal operations. So having said that, I did a little digging on kind of urban street design, and a typical, the face-to-face curb right there is 28 feet wide. Typically, according to the state of Wisconsin, we don't typically see parking on streets that narrow, let alone two sides of the street. So basically what I'm coming forward for discussion and approval is to eliminate the parking zones, and they're not even striped. It's just basically unpainted parking curb on the north side of Commercial. There's 4 stalls at that location to paint that strip of curb yellow and place no parking signs, which would allow safe travel vehicles moving in each direction. It would give that recommended 10 to 12 feet of travel lane lift in each direction. So when cars do meet each other, there's ample room for them to get by one another. So it's open for discussion. Like I said, it's an observation that I saw. Spoke with Jeff about it. He recommended coming to Public Work, coming to Public Safety, and proceeding that way. Like I said, downtown parking is hot.
So where are you putting the new 4? Where have you identified the extra new 4 ones that you're taking away?
Behind the River City Center.
Good. You had an answer already, eh?
Yeah.
And the Public Works Committee has agreed or
Yep.
recommended that we do remove it?
Yeah.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second, but I have a question. I'm just wondering, at what point would we look at potentially making that a one-way so that there is not head-on? I mean, was that discussed at all?
Nope, that wasn't discussed at all. And I think the issue that you would have with that, just, shooting from the hip is, it's one of our main public parking lots, one of the biggest ones that we have in the downtown area. It certainly could be signed. I mean, people can be trained, but it's just, I think you'd have an easier route just eliminating 4 stalls than trying to go one way. But it's certainly on the table. I'm just looking to make things a little safer because, like I said, I've been through it. I've seen other people do it, and I just, something that I thought was pressing enough to resolve.
We may catch heat for removing 4 parking spots. But
I get it, yeah.
I understand the safety because I too have been in that situation. So
We don't have a lot of choice here. I think it's pretty cut and dried.
no. Any comments? You good?
Yeah, I just didn't know, would we be able to hold on to that parking if it was one way? But the next street to the north, that little parking area, that's already one way, right? Or is that an outlet as well?
It's not signed.
It's not
It's not
signed one
signed
way.
that
No,
way.
people go in and out of that little
Gotcha.
Williams parking lot there too.
Got it.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? We recommend that next August 5th.
Yep.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
You want to stay for the other one, too?
I'll stick around. Oh, electronic?
Yeah.
I don't know anything about that.
Okay, number B, 3B, discussion possible action on electric vehicle parking spaces downtown.
Are the Purple Tree folks here?
Yeah.
Thank you. My name's Dan Brook. I'm actually here on behalf of my daughter Sarah, who was the primary one behind the Purple Tree. She's on her way to Canada right now. One of her sons, my grandson, is in an international bike race, and he was in an accident. So they're up there to pick him up and bring him back, and otherwise she'd be here. So the request is really fairly simple. We're in the midst of a fairly significant cultural change, moving from fossil fuel vehicles to electric. And if you've stayed current, as my guess is many of you have, it's only a matter of a decade or two until the majority of vehicles will be electric. In the meanwhile, to encourage that transition, we would just ask that you would consider having a parking space or two downtown someplace, as you do for unloading packages. Two of the commercial spots in front of Wired Robin to be reserved for electric vehicles, and offer them free parking, maybe an hour, maybe two, just as a means of encouraging switch to electric powered vehicles. The community, Hudson, the city of Hudson, is moving quite rapidly now in terms of becoming more sustainable. Recently are in the process of adding some recycling bins downtown, hopefully some composting in the future. So this is just another way to express the community's support, I think, for preserving our planet, extending its life, and being concerned about the kind of place our kids and grandkids have to live. So that's just a simple request, to set aside at least one or two places, someplace downtown, for free electric parking. Incidentally, I know there are people in the city who are hoping to get some charging stations down here. The state of Wisconsin and the federal government have authorized an organization out of the Twin Cities that I'm working with, as is somebody in the city, to put a charging station off of 94, either in the park and ride up there or at Family Fresh, because they've received money to put charging stations every 50 miles from the border, the eastern border of Michigan, to the western border of Montana on 94. And all of the places have accomplished that except the city of Hudson. So this just kind of adds credibility to the change that we're in the process of making, and hope you'll consider that. And thank you, Mr. Morissette, for offering to put our request forward. We appreciate it.
Dan, are you looking to put charging stations at those spots, or just?
No. Well, that would be nice, but I think we understand that the whole Second Street will be reorganized shortly, and so we actually see it in terms of maybe just trying it for a year as an experiment, see if it is meaningful to anybody. I don't know, and recognizing that in the future, I'm sure that will happen probably, but not for the foreseeable future.
Have they had requests down there? Has there been people saying, I wish I had a place for electric cars? We just took 4 away, spots, and our situation with parking, so we're doing a crapshoot ourselves here, trying to figure out where to put everybody.
Well, as I'm sure you've heard from many downtown businesses, parking is our biggest challenge from a customer point of view. And I would say that except for a few people who have already made the transition in their minds, it's not a big call, no. This is,
okay.
Yeah. It may be, but not now.
Discussion.
Have you seen this in any of the charging stations in other communities like our size in Hudson? On public property? I've seen it in private, but I haven't seen it in public yet.
No, I have not either. The closest one of the sort we're trying to bring into Hudson is in Menominee, right off the interstate. And in terms of Hudson, they prefer it be on a private property within a half a mile of an interstate exit. But XL Energy, who's working to get it here, would like it to be on the park and ride at the corner of Carmichael and what is that, Cooley?
Cooley, yeah.
But getting the state to respond, you would have more luck than we are so far, I would guess, but it's fairly difficult. So we're working ahead to put it on a private spot. The way it works, if a Family Fresh, for example, gets corporate approval and they're at the final stages of that, they're expected to contribute the land and $5,000, allow the charging station people to have I think a 10-year lease there. And during that time, a good portion of the proceeds from the charging station go back to the business that's given them the land, and the average payback on 94 right now for the business is about 3 years.
Thank you.
Do you know what a charging station costs to install?
Well, the kind that we would have to have in terms of what the federal and state governments are requiring costs about $65,000, out of which about $35,000 state and federal dollars will pay for. And then in Hudson, we've got to raise about $30,000 from independent sources. So if you know anybody wealthy, just let me know. I don't think it'll be a problem, but that's what it costs. On the other hand, once that is there, the cost for charging stations downtown run about $600, much less expensive, because they sort of piggyback on to the major charging station on top of the hill. And the company that is doing that then sells them to the city for much less money. But the problem is, right now, there are two major kinds of chargers. One is for Tesla, and there's already a Tesla charger up on the Best Western hotel or motel grounds on top of the hill. But here they have to provide a charging station for a Tesla and for all the other vehicles. All the others have the same design. So the Nissans, the Ford Focus electric, all the plug-in hybrids, Volvo, BMW, Mercedes, they all use the same kind of charging, except for Tesla.
And how many cars can you charge at one time with a...
Four.
Four in one charge, okay. That makes sense.
What's your pleasure? How far are you from the Mickelsons? Is there a 15-minute loading zone in front of the Mickelsons on 2nd Street?
No, there are two
On the corner.
on the corner. There is a handicap right in front of Mickelson's, and then there are I think maybe 3 or 4 spaces before it gets to the Purple Tree. We aren't terribly concerned where it is, just maybe having one someplace downtown.
Well, I was thinking maybe we could sign one of those around the corner with the 15-minute for electric parking only, instead of taking another full one out. It's a possibility.
But not leaving it at 15-minute, increasing the time,
Well,
or
either or, leave them both there. It's either 15-minute parking or electric parking. But that would be confusing, wouldn't it?
right? You were suggesting like an hour or 2. Is that? Is that? I mean, can they recharge in that amount of time, or
No, it would not be a charging station at all. It just
for electrical vehicle?
Yeah, just for
parking
electric.
only?
So it would be a courtesy to encourage...
Yes, it would.
Courtesy,
Yes, just to encourage people with electric cars or other people to buy electric cars. There's only one dealer in town, incidentally, that's equipped to sell electric cars, and I was disappointed. I drive a little Ford Focus electric, which is a wonderful car, but neither the Ford dealer or the Chrysler dealer are equipped to sell electric cars. Only the Chevrolet dealer is in town right now.
But again, there's no customers of yours that are asking for this or have this need, like from an immediate standpoint, or?
I would say no. No,
Okay.
no. I would say this is. We're thinking of this more in terms of presenting to people who come downtown Hudson a kind of a visual identification that it's a community that encourages the driving of electric cars.
Sure. I guess, I mean, if I had my druthers, it's a great idea. Just with the parking changes that we're doing overall, getting some data behind that before we make yet another additional change, I don't know if that's...
Well, I'm all for encouraging
Yeah.
energy conservation. I
Same
don't think
here.
any of us would deny that. But I agree with all the changes that we've got. Now, how long is it going to be before they have the charging station up at Family Fresh, do you think?
Well, the state and federal funding run out at the end of the year, so the goal is to have it up by the end of the summer yet, if possible.
Because once they've got that, and then adding charging stations downtown would be something that I think that we should look into and be,
And we'll have a little
Interesting.
time under our belts
Yeah.
with the new parking
Right.
system. So
yeah. So then, yeah,
I think what we have to, I think the best thing is to postpone and wait.
Wait
We're
till
not
the fall.
saying no for sure, you know, but I think it's a good thing to certainly look into
Sure.
and to get more data, as you would say.
Take it up maybe in 6 months again, have the conversation? Would that be amenable to you?
Oh yeah, we're amenable to anything. We recognize that change is slow and hard sometimes.
Right?
but if you don't bring it up, nothing's going to change.
Again, I
That's
think
right.
it's a great idea. I mean,
Well,
yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And
Thanks.
Do you want me to stay for the next thing I was on the agenda for too right away?
Do you,
Yeah,
and do you need a motion for the,
postponement,
for
yes.
postponing? So,
He
I'll move to
suggested-
postpone
3
discussing it 3 months?
yeah, let's do it 3 months, because we'll see what happens.
Mhm.
All right, I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? So we'll take it up next month as well,
Thank
or
you.
3 months from now.
Really appreciate it. I'm sure Sarah will be here the next time if there's more discussion.
Okay,
Thanks.
good. Do you want to do yours next one right away? If you want, as long as you're here.
It's up to you. I'm happy to do so.
If the committee doesn't mind, we'll skip quickly to number 9, discussion possible action, the traffic safety concern on Mayor Road and Aspen Drive.
So this has nothing to do with the Purple Tree. We, incidentally, I've lived in Hudson for 23 years. A number of years ago, we moved from across the high school up to the village of River Ridge, which is right at the corner of River Ridge Road and Mayor Road. And across the street from that was an open field of, I don't know how many, 100 and some acres, which is now being converted, as you know, into homes. And it changes the traffic patterns up there. We're also quite close to the old dog track and all the changes that are taking place there. Our concern is just a small section of Mayor Road that is contiguous to the new development on the south side, which will have 47 homes just in that section, and coming then are some townhomes and finally some multiple family apartments. I'm wondering if at the corner of Aspen and Mayor, the city would consider putting up a sign that would say something like local traffic only or closed to through traffic, because one thing that surprised us when we moved up there is that section of Mayor Road and turning south then, or north, excuse me, on River Ridge Road is almost more of a pedestrian street than it is a traffic street. There are a lot of children in the apartment complexes on Mayor Road, a little bit to the east, who have limited play space. So they walk down Mayor Road, River Ridge Road to get to Anderson Park, which is really the only park in the area there. We have a lot of cyclists, a lot of walkers. During this season, we have a lot of pickleball players. And so it is a sort of a high pedestrian area. And even before it starts to develop and have more people living there, that will certainly happen within the next year, we would request that maybe there would be some evidence as people move in there that that section of the road is limited in the amount of traffic that could be there.
Don't know the policy on limiting a road. It is not a certified city-sized road.
No.
Correct, Mike? We're well aware of that problem. We also closed off that what they wanted to have was a potential entrance on there.
Yeah.
I'm hesitant to do anything yet, Daniel, until we're done with the reconstruction of Mayor Road to see what it's going to do. I don't know if that's the answer you really wanted, but certainly up for discussion. Or not. So, and the concern is taken, but Mayor is going to be a pretty important road up there for all that development and for everybody else. River Roads is just a whole different topic, and I don't think we have the right to force anything up there on River Ridge Road. Of course, I know that because we've tried to do that before. I think is it private, semi-private, or how's that work, Mike?
It's joint. And I know
If
some of the, I'll just add one thing. I know some of the preliminary traffic studies, when they did the Lee property kind of capital cost study, it said that a majority of the traffic that are coming to that Aspen Mayor Road intersection are either going to be going straight north on Aspen or taking a right on Mayor going out to Carmichael. There's going to be limited traffic that would have a reason to turn left and go on River Ridge Road. So I know that was spoken of, when we were doing the initial kind of platting and that type of thing. So, but I think, like you said, just kind of wait and see what the traffic patterns are and then address it from there. Yeah. We are shortening the road from Aspen to the west to River Ridge to kind of give the impression that this is more of a residential traffic. We're not going to allow parking on that stretch, so that's also a factor as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I only bring it up because already we can see some increase in especially a lot of commercial construction traffic, which is kind of hard on.
yeah, absolutely. So for sure, I think we'll bring it back once that road is complete.
Okay.
And if you can make that a note, we'll revisit that for sure. It needs to be addressed up there for sure.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for bringing it to attention.
Could the city notify the construction people that they are expected to avoid Aspen Drive when they're bringing in their trucks and
I
things?
don't know if that's possible, depending on the type of equipment they're bringing in or what.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I've witnessed from going up to there, there's a lot of work going on at the homes off of River Ridge Road, so it's a lot of DOT trucks or businesses that are serving those properties that are using that. But I can certainly reach out to Haas Construction and their subcontractors to say, just remind them that that is a residential road and to not use that area. So
I was actually up there the other day. There are a lot of potholes, so if you get somebody up there.
okay, Randy.
I mean, they're quite a bit.
Yep.
If I may interject, I think one of the reasons that I didn't have an opinion on this, I feel like I didn't have enough information, enough time to understand the area. So I guess when we do bring it back, it'd be nice to have a little bit more of a snapshot of that issue.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, number 4, discussion possible action on the sex offender ordinance. Bill, I think you kind of wanted to.
I did. Thank you, Chief Willems, on this. So, again, taking a look at, I wasn't quite clear between the first snapshot and the second snapshot, because both show the 200-foot buffer, is that correct?
Yeah, they all show,
Or they all show?
all of them.
Right.
So, well, the first one shows the current 200-foot buffer, and then the next one would show the increase to 350 feet, and then the next one would show the increase to 500 feet. And they should be different colors in there, but she didn't have a way, when making the map,
To show them
to
individually?
show it individually.
Sure, I get it, I get it. I mean, I see now what that restriction does, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how much that gets restricted. And do you have a sense, did you get a chance to look at this, Mr. Morrissey? Do you, I mean, I know that you were part of that discussion early on. Does that,
The original ordinance I had brought was very much more restrictive than this, and so. if you-
even more than this?
What was
Okay,
it,
I think you started at 1,000 feet, didn't you?
1,500?
1,500.
got it.
So if you wanted to bump it up 100 or so, maybe we could. I don't know what that would do. Or you showed it what it would do, right?
Yeah, if we bumped it up 150 feet,
Up to 350.
be about just under 50% of the properties would be in the restricted area.
And that's when you get everybody kind of bringing down the microscope on you and saying, whoa, they
Right.
have rights too.
Correct,
And then we get ourselves into an issue with it.
right. Has this been reviewed at all by our legal counsel?
This part?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Well, you know what she's going to say. Why do you know, if we move it, the state's already taken action on different parts of the,
Right.
and different ones across the state.
And the state's been pretty clear what their recommendation is, so,
But there's no guidance as to the percentage.
no. And I don't think anybody's gonna give guidance as far as you can have this percentage, but not that percentage.
Got it.
I think they leave it kind of open-ended on purpose.
So what are other cities doing? What kind of a buffer are they having?
If there are any with any buffer anymore, they're pretty close to what our current one is.
The 200?
But when people go to try and increase the buffer, different municipalities, from my understanding with talking to the Department of Corrections and other people with the state, is that they're making the recommendation to remove the buffer altogether. Because their goal is to get 100% compliance from the offender. And if it's too hard to find a place to live as a registered offender, people are less likely to register. And we'd rather have them register so we know where they are than to not register, if that makes sense.
Good point.
So while I appreciate your effort, Bill, I think it would be smart for us to leave it alone. My opinion.
Sure. Well, in your history, I mean, I'm hearing that loud and clear with your history on it. Do you have a sense?
Well, I agree with the chief that we want them to register. We want to know who's out there.
Right.
And the other thing that I was wondering was if you add further restrictions, are you going to be removing housing that from their from that area that's affordable to them? Because if if the only properties that are available are too expensive for most people to afford, and
Well, that's the
I
crux
couldn't
of
tell
the
from-
argument. Who cares? I mean,
Yeah.
that's what people would say. We don't want them here,
Right,
which we can't do because they have rights as well.
right.
So,
But if we don't have, I mean, if they can't find an affordable place, they're not going to register, and they're going to be in a place that
well,
is in the
typically
restricted
the
area. Then.
Department of Justice will go and try to place them elsewhere. They're supposed to be placed in the original domicile, in the way the ordinance statute is written. So
Even if it's within that boundary? Do you know offhand, or?
yes.
Yeah, that's one of the exceptions to the
That's one of the
restriction, is
exceptions,
if they
okay.
live there before the offense,
They can live
they
within?
can live there at that residence
Even if it's within?
after the offense, even if it's within the geo-restricted area.
Got it,
I believe that's right in the ordinance,
got it.
one of the exceptions.
I think a difficult thing for me to see, and again, I haven't had a lot of time to absorb this piece, but is that second section has the 500 buffer. So you look at the two and you're like, whoa, it's really hard for me to delineate how much is that 350. I mean, that 350 is going up to closer to 50% versus, what is it now, a third?
Yeah, 1,900 properties out of 6,600.
You put us in jeopardy of losing the ordinance completely, whether mandated by state or whatnot.
Have they done that with other communities?
Yes. I don't know what communities specifically, but that has happened.
Okay. Is there somebody that, I get the history, I understand that, but I'm just wondering, is there somebody that we can approach to talk to from any kind of state department in terms of, that's opening up the can of worms?
It is, because the DOJ was here quite a bit, every meeting we had when we were doing this. They were here and lobbied against it, and that's why it ended up getting watered down as far as it did. So again, I would just probably leave what we have, Bill, and I appreciate your concern, and I wish we could, but they have rights too.
Mm-hmm.
So, any further discussion?
No.
Okay, seeing none, we will move on to our next agenda. 5, discussion possible action on block party application on 3rd Street between Pine Street, Division Street on Sunday, August 25th, 2019, 12 to 4. Chief?
Yes, is Jerry here? I'm here. Are you in her place? Would you like to present on this?
If you would state your name and your address for the record, please, that would be great.
Good afternoon. My name is Deb Bodway. I live at 1425 3rd Street, and I'm here today to talk about a block party request that we have, which would require blocking of 3rd Street. And just a little bit of background, we had a neighborhood watch meeting, I think it was back in March, and we had a couple officers came to Jerry's home, actually, and had a nice attendance by a number of neighbors. A number of us are new on our block, and one of the suggestions was, it was a really great meeting we had as our neighborhood watch meeting, and so then the next suggestion was maybe we should have a block party to continue keeping the neighbors close and connected, and a lot of us, we all shared email addresses and all, so we're kind of a neighborhood watch group as well. So we would like to have a block party on Sunday, August 25th from noon to 4. We're talking about, really, it's just we've notified people. We haven't sent out our invites, but we've saved the date, and we've notified the 1300 block and 1400 block of 3rd Street. And then we've also invited neighbors that would be on 2nd Street but are behind the alley on the 1400 block. So, excuse me, so I don't think we're talking a lot of people. We're not sure how many would come, but I would think maybe about 30 people. So our request would be, we were thinking we would probably need 3 blocks or barricades. That's the word I was looking for. 2 on where we'd block Pine, where 3rd Street goes into Pine, we would block there, and then also at Division Street. So we'd be looking for 3 barricades.
Any neighbors say they would be opposed to it, the blocking off of the streets?
I mean, we haven't gone around and asked the neighbors, but certainly there was a lot of interest at the neighborhood watch meeting to have a block party.
Okay. And I applaud your efforts, because we need more of that in today's society. Get to know your neighbors.
I mean, already it's we're all on the lookout for everybody, and we send emails around when we see something. So this is just another way to continue that neighborhood watch. And I think a couple of the officers have even offered maybe to come with their squad car for the kids, and so we think it's a really nice
Jeff, any
event.
issues?
I don't have any issues. It's a 1 block section of 3rd Street.
1 block, yeah.
Not dissimilar from what we've started doing here on Halloween, and that's for a whole lot longer than that.
And we're the very north end, so
And there is still access. You can come around on Pine from 4th Street, I think.
well, we would block. So you got this is, let's say, 3rd Street, and then it stops, and here's Pine. We were thinking we probably need to block just so people don't go through the alleys and then try to come down 3rd Street.
Right. We just, as long as emergency vehicles or service vehicles would have access
To the alleys, they
places that they
certainly
need to
would.
go.
Yes.
I just said, really, we'll need access to 3rd, so nothing permanent can be set up out there. I mean, it's fine to have everything out, but no, like, bouncy houses or anything
No.
that,
This is-
so that if something happens, we can lift the barricades, we can come
Okay.
down. And that's the big thing, too, is that you don't do anything would take a while to take down in the street.
No, if anything, it's probably be a few tables. We actually, next to one of the apartment buildings, there's an empty lot, and that's where we probably will be having kid games and maybe just some tables, probably for food, will be out on the street, most likely.
Very nice.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank
All
you.
opposed? So we'll recommend approval for our August 5th city council meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Number 6, discussion possible action on traffic safety concern, Hanley Road and O'Keefe Road. You all got your 1,000 pages of data?
Really,
That was kind of intimidating.
there's only the one table is the only piece of important data. You don't have to sift through all the actual data.
What I extracted from it was there's really not a problem there.
There's high traffic volume,
Right.
Right.
for sure. But as far as a speed issue, with the average speed 36 and the speed limit on that road 35, I don't think there's a giant speed issue. You can look at the high proximity with speeds on the one side of the table. I mean, you essentially have 2,800 vehicle or 3,600 vehicles out of almost 16,000 that are going over 40. So you do have some vehicles that are traveling, at a higher rate above the speed, and obviously you saw the max speed at 63. So I'm not going to say there's not an issue.
It's minimal.
But I think the volume of traffic is more of the issue than the speed, if that makes sense.
And that stays 35 for the entirety of?
All the way to Mayor Road, from Crestview
From
to
Crestview.
Mayor, yeah.
Well, what are our options here?
Well, what was the original request was for
For a stop sign?
For a
was it?
stop sign, a four-way stop sign.
and I just
For a
don't
traffic
think right
light.
there, and again, because we've got so much stuff happening up there, we just need to wait and see how these traffic patterns are gonna come about before we just start
Well, and
throwing
that's the other
signs.
question, is with the development of the Lee property off of Mayor, how much of that, how much volume increases on O'Keefe? I don't know if that was even part of the study. Because they talk about vehicles going out to Carmichael,
Right.
but what about,
Well, they're coming down O'Keefe and,
right,
so we have to establish a pattern before we just start throwing signs up and follow the policies we have.
What is south of Hanley on O'Keefe? That's,
a couple of storage units in the entrance to the Bienman Farm addition.
and the opposite way, towards Crestview on O'Keefe? There's an
Industrial-
apartment.
well, industrial,
It's all industrial.
it's all industrial.
I was thinking the only thing that I would consider would be at some point slowing that traffic down. Not necessarily for the entirety of O'Keefe, but coming up to that stop sign. That's the only thing that I would necessarily consider, but I don't know.
I'm not opposed to slowing it down, but I don't know if we should wait yet or not.
Can I just ask one question?
Sure.
Was there a lot of complaints on this, or was this?
No,
This is one, right? One complaint?
one that I believe of. And that's why I just kind
And
of,
it is an issue from personal experience trying to get across that intersection, especially going east and west on Hanley, between 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock at night.
and worse during hockey season.
You know, and yeah, during the wintertime, it's even worse. And we have had a few pretty significant crashes at that intersection, but it's not like we're having a crash a day there like we are in some other areas.
Mhm.
But it's definitely something that deserves some attention in the future.
So I guess we should just put it on the next agenda or down the road a ways, 3 months, once we get a better feel. Does that work for you?
That'd be
That
fine.
works for me.
Okay. All right, number 7, discussion possible action on a hands-free cell phone ordinance. You all have the updated copy, clean copy of what we've got. And so if you guys want to take, do a brief introduction again as well. State your name and your address for the record. And on behalf of us, and as far as I'm concerned, I appreciate that this has come to us and that we can implement this hopefully within the city because it's long overdue. Anybody spending any time on the road out there, even in the city, you can see people not paying attention.
Very well said. I can't say it any better than that. My name is Tom Geltz. I'm at 763 Eldro Road, Hudson, Wisconsin. At a previous public safety meeting, I introduced the concept of introducing a ordinance, city ordinance for hands-free. We had spent a lot of time in Minnesota drafting a law there that was passed, and it's going into effect on August 1st. A lot of people from Hudson drive in Minnesota, and I presented at the local high school and talked to the kids about not using your phone at all in the car, but certainly at the very least doing hands-free. And I think it's good. I'd like the state to pick it up as well, but because it took 10 years in Minnesota to get it done, I'm not willing to wait that long in Wisconsin, so that's why I'm working with the city here, and hopefully eventually St. Croix County and then the state of Wisconsin.
Very good. So what we have here is a copy of what the city attorney put together. It does not have a bond schedule. It's our hope that we will have the bond schedule for the fine amount with the introduction of this ordinance on August 5th city council meeting to adopt.
Okay. I'll make the motion to send this to city council.
Okay.
Second.
Any other discussion? Anybody have anything to add?
Thank you for doing this.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So we will recommend approval on August 5th city council meeting.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Number 8, discussion possible action on Brewfest in Lakefront Park, September 21st, 2019, 5 to 8 p.m. Jeff?
Yeah, the promoter is here to
Okay.
present his issue.
If you'd state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Will Jenkins at 607 Cedar Drive North. So this is the Hudson Brewfest. I've held it the previous 2 years under a different name. We called it the Backcountry Brewfest. Then it was mid-July and was sponsored by an organization called Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, which is a national nonprofit focused on land, water, and wildlife conservation. They made a move away from hosting that event in this area, but many of the local nonprofits that are kind of not sister organizations, but all work together with them, were interested. So I spoke with the folks at Sportsmen for the Boundary Waters, and they were on board with hosting the event. So with me kind of at the helm, as I was the last 2 years for the national organization. So largely same event, just name change, and we pushed it back to September so we don't sweat to death like we did the last 2 years. So largely same event. The plan will look almost exactly like the plan from the last 2 years. Notable changes being the sponsoring organization, but still a 501c3 nonprofit. If anything, it's even more local because it's based in the Twin Cities and East. They have followers throughout the country, but obviously heavily in this area. We'd shift it to a shorter event, and the reason we made it from just 5 to 8 is we've noticed the last 2 years, the way we served alcohol is you bought a pass that got you a souvenir cup and a bracelet. Well, anybody that comes in gets a bracelet, so if cups get passed around, we're not jeopardizing age limits. So if you walk in the park, if you're over 21, we give you a bracelet. Then you got a souvenir cup. To get a beer, you had to give a ticket, and you got a beer. And it was usually like a 6 to 8 ounce pour, depending on the year. We adjusted a little bit based on the cup sizes. What we'd like to do this year is shorten it to only 3 hours, make the cup even smaller, and unlimited tastings, and make it a tasting event rather than larger beers. So that is, again, why I'm here, because that's a significant change, but we're still seeking your approval for it. We'll have licensed servers for all the different breweries. We're shooting for about 12. We've got about 9 interested with 4 confirmed, so we're well on our way to lining up breweries. Each will have a licensed server there. We'll have staff at the event trained to identify people that could be on their way to poor decisions. We've not even remotely had problems with that the last 2 years. That's why I'm comfortable offering this year. The crowd we attract is not a crowd that's just trying to hammer beers. It's craft beer and a 4 ounce cup that would probably be more like a 2 to 3 ounce pour per person per try. So those are the notable changes. Tickets, we'd limit ticket sales to, at the most, it would be 600 because of the licensing. We can't have more than 1,000 people. That leaves room for families and kids to come because we'll have live music, food trucks as the last couple of years, and of course the snow fencing placed around the area around the band shell and porta potties provided.
What were your hours last year?
I think it was 4 to 9.
Okay.
And so when you say 600, you're talking about 600 people that would be potentially drinking?
Yes.
But there would be more attendees as
Right.
families,
Because of the nature of the park, we can't tell anyone not to come, so I'd rather have a wide buffer for that 1,000. And we do promote it being a family event. We'll have vendors on site that are more product sponsors. Like last year, we had like an optics company demoing optics and stuff like that. So there'll be other minor activities, and of course the food trucks, and the river's right there, so it makes a nice kind of stop through for folks coming into town.
In previous years, did you use glass for your cups? Is that
So the first year, and I left it glass in here, and I'll kind of explain that. I'm glad you brought that up. The first year we used metal cups. Last year we used glass. We didn't have a single one break. So that was all good. I'd rather not use glass because I don't like that potential. Right. Just because all it takes is somebody careless leaving one on the ground and somebody steps on it barefoot, right, and you've got an issue. So I left it as glass as like contingency. We're in discussions with potential title sponsors that would then purchase. We'll either use small aluminum cups, or they're called Silipint, but it wouldn't be a full pint. It's a silicone cup. So our priority is to get one of those two, but like I said, I left glass just in case, because glass is cheap. Right. It's easier to get a hold of 600 glass cups than 600 metal ones.
Because again, my concern is your concern.
Yeah, 100%.
Is there breakage, and does
and we can make that
a
point of approval, is that it not be glass.
Did we have any issues last year?
None the last
The year
year.
before?
No issues.
And how much are the tickets?
We're waiting to set the final price based on number of breweries attending, because that just means we have to buy more beer and different beer. But it'll be somewhere between like 35 and 45, which is actually at the lower end for that type of a event. And of course, 100% of the proceeds go directly to the nonprofit.
What was the cost last year?
Total?
Yeah. No. Yeah. What were the ticket?
I think what we did, we did $25 got you a cup and 4 tickets.
Okay.
And it was like a 6 ounce pour. Mm-hmm. So you got 20-ish ounces of beer with your ticket.
Okay. And then will all food trucks and everything else be within the fenced-in area?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. So they'll all be on the north side of the bandshell area, right off of the parking area, because I didn't want them driving all over the park anyway. So they're always on that north side within the fencing, and we keep the 3 corners pretty open for people and food trucks or whoever might need to get in and out. So it's not like we have a rope or anything.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Number 10, discussion possible action on traffic safety concern on E Canyon Drive. Whose is this one?
I think this was Joyce's recall based on the additional information.
Yeah, so Bill, you weren't here when we first discussed it, but that's your neighborhood. Were you able to talk to Joe Bremer?
I was not.
Okay.
I was not.
All right, so I've asked Mike Mraz to look into speed humps, and I sent out a lot of information about speed humps. So can you give us an update on what you found out?
Certainly. So at Joyce's request, I did contact a lot of the surrounding municipal engineers, Bolton and Mank. They had reached out to communities that had done these before and got a bunch of information, both the pros and cons that other communities had experienced. And I'll just kind of go through them, and then it'll help aid the discussion as we move forward. So cost, typically typical speed hump. It's not a speed bump, it's a speed hump, which is more of an elongated traffic control device, about $6,000 per speed hump. Okay, they're installed typically on streets that are 32 feet or narrower, have speeds no higher than 30 miles an hour. And then some of the pros, of course, is there is a change in speeds at those locations. However, there is about a 20% change in route. People will find alternate routes to drive to avoid the speed humps. So you're pushing traffic to other areas. Some of the communities have had issues with maintenance of them, making sure that they're exactly right, because there are a lot of vehicles that do bottom out going over them, so they have to be engineered and designed correctly. And a lot of times other communities will require 80 to 90% of community backing before they even consider installing them, because you see the situation where there's a few people that want them, and there you got the same amount of people that don't want them, so on and so forth. So we want to be really diligent in doing our research and stuff like that before we even consider putting these in the city of Hudson. So
in your opinion, as director of the City of Public Works,
yep,
your opinion in these are?
My gut feeling, doing the research and talking to other municipal directors, engineers, is they're more of a headache than what they're worth. There are other forms of alleviating traffic congestion or traffic speeds that are a little more cost effective, and you don't have the headaches with them. So that's my gut reaction, speaking to the people that I've spoken to.
Did you talk to anybody in Minneapolis?
No, Burnsville.
Okay, because Joe Bremer called and talked to people in Minneapolis. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it because of the timing and the change in the time. But what he said was that in talking to the people there, that what they do is they require a petition for a speed hump. The neighbors are in favor of them. They do like them. In fact, they raise money in order to have them installed. And then when the streets are repaved, the neighbors are saying, you are going to reinstall that speed hump where it is. And so they do like using them. And then reading all the literature that, I sent out some different literature, they do seem to be effective and helpful. I think that we should consider using them. I don't think that we should just add them willy-nilly, but I think that we should start developing a policy on installation of speed humps and try them and see what the reaction is.
Are you offering to develop that policy? Sounded like that, right, Bill?
I can start working on it. Yeah, work with Mike and Public Works.
I agree. I'm sorry, I just interrupted you. Sorry.
No, I can work with Mike and Public Works, and
I'm concerned with this one. Again, this is on that specific street. You know, the places that I've seen very effective use of speed bumps is when there's a shortcut, right? So somebody that's not a resident finds a way to shortcut through a neighborhood and get to someplace quicker, and doing a speed bump this way. With this particular street, it's kind of a collector street, right? So a lot of the residents are using it. So I agree with you about doing a policy, and I think absolutely there would have to be a petition process so that everybody gets a voice that uses that street, right? I would absolutely be in favor of you doing that. Sorry.
Isn't that great?
But I think we should have a policy so that when we do get these requests as they come in, well, here's our policy, and that way it takes it away from a conversation of multiple ones coming in here and then us not knowing how to proceed with that.
And my husband and I would like one in front of our house because we have a curve right in front of our house, and and we're right behind the high school. The students actually speed up to go around that curve. We have had so many mailboxes get our mailboxes have been replaced, I don't know how many times, and our next door neighbors. We have a transformer box right there behind the mailboxes. So I think that we do have a valid concern there, and that might be a viable solution. But I think we should continue to explore this.
So we'll hold it over till the next meeting, or whenever you decide to bring it back up with something for us tangible.
So a policy?
Yeah.
Okay. And then, I brought it up to Jim Weber, and he said that he really is interested in these two.
Again, I would caution you, because once we start, you are going to have to put them everywhere, and that is not what that is for.
No, I agree. You know, it's like sidewalks. You don't want, you've got to be careful.
And I would like to see, if possible, like to see that line item, agenda item, be more towards the policy versus this particular street. Sure. So I'm in the process of reaching out to Red Cedar Canyon as a whole.
Yeah.
To see what everybody feels. The first feelers that I put out there is kind of, let's not do that. So if we can make that more about the policy versus that specific instance. And I'll connect with Joe as well.
Yeah.
So just for clarification, would the policy run through Public Works prior to public, kind of concurrently both?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll have to work together.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Number 11, the discussion possible action on first responder dive team program.
I mean, I drafted the issue sheet, but
We just wanted to put it back on to make sure.
I think,
and
we're
maybe
just
we'll get the cart
follow
before the
up to see where we left off a couple months ago.
Well, do we want to start with talking about dive team?
Why don't we start with first responder?
First responders?
I've got to leave soon, and I have a few
it.
comments that I wanted to make.
Got it.
The first responder program, one of the things that I thought about that it should be important would be that we ask Alina to, whoever the first responders are, that this, okay, so when Lakeview is down to 2 ambulances, that means there's one on our side of the river, one on the other side of the river. Then that would be the time to notify the first responders that there might be a need for them, because they're not going to be needed as long as there's an ambulance right there at Hudson Hospital. So, Alina, my suggestion is that Alina would notify the first responders that give them the first alert that they might be needed soon. And then if one of the ambulances goes out, on either side of the river, then the remaining ambulance is going to be moved over. So then that would be another time that Alina would want Alina to notify them that we've got a little higher alert or something like that, and go from there.
John, is that kind of the pattern that would happen?
Yeah.
Let me just interject first. Joyce, I don't know if you've had time to think, I'm sure you have through the process. We already have first responders with our police department.
Right.
That are already there on first on scene, trained, etc. So now I'm just kind of wondering, what are we going to do with this? And are we going to muddy up the scene?
Okay.
So there's a couple of different options with this, and again, we haven't talked about this at all in depth. I know the last meeting, we had talked about Josh and I getting together, and I honestly have not had time with other focuses to try and get up and running over here. So I do have some ideas behind first responders, some things I can throw out and see what Josh and Chief St. Martin think of that. But I can just give you some examples of what we've done, what we do currently, what we've done in the past with first responders. An example, in the city of North St. Paul, when the fire department did not respond on every call. If we were coming from outside the city, from our middle coverage point, which is Highway 36 and County Road 17, it's probably a 6 or 7 minute response time. We had a policy that our crews would just notify dispatch to start the fire department because we're coming from our coverage point. That's one example to how that process works. Over here, I think we would, if we had a first responder group in place, my recommendation would be that we limit the amount of calls that go on to the Delta, Echo, and Omega type calls. So that would be in the control at St. Croix County. Now, I'm saying this without having any conversations with St. Croix County Dispatch, because they might not want to do that. That might be a policy
This is for
issue.
just discussion, so.
Say that again?
This is all just for discussion, so we
Yeah,
can
correct.
figure out
Yeah.
what, and if we need to do
Yeah.
this. So when it's time to interject that into the conversation, we will contact and go forward.
But that would be my recommendation if we do that. The other recommendation I would have, and I've had this conversation with some of the other community partners in just recently, and that would be, instead of having a first responder group in the town of Hudson, one in the village in North Hudson, one in the city of Hudson, we just make that one group. And in one group, you're going to have members from all the different municipalities that we're responding to, more than likely. And some of them are so close that they may be able to respond into there. The downside to that is there's no controlling who goes on the call. So, if you end up paging the first responders out on, I'll say, an interesting call that people think are interesting, you might get 10 people responding. And that might become an issue too. So you need to think about those types of things when you are looking at a first responder group.
That makes sense. That's kind of what I meant by
Yeah.
muddy in the water.
Okay.
Someone doesn't want to go out on the whatever fender bender. They want to go to the
Okay.
tragic one.
Yeah. Well, my big concern, and I should have prefaced with that, is for those times when, when there's an ambulance at Hudson Hospital, the response time shouldn't be that long. But when, for those times when there isn't an ambulance right there at Hudson Hospital, then we need to make sure that we're covered.
And that's another thing you can do. I don't like putting the responsibility on our crews to make that decision, but we've done that in the past with different departments. Then the issue is, why didn't you page us out for this call, but at 3 in the morning for this call you paged us out for it? So that, there's downsides to either way you do it. The best way to do it is to have that protocol where you're basing it on the 911 call and how they're coding the call. But there again, you got no control over who's coming and who's not coming.
Well, and are we having a volunteer program, or is it going to be police-based, or is it going to?
Well, and my recommendation would be you do a volunteer program like occurs in the town of Hudson right now in the village of North Hudson. And I think, Josh, you have the most experience with that. What are your thoughts on it?
I mean,
I mean, me and Scott talked this morning about it. It all boils down to what's the city want? I mean, that's the ultimate question. What's the city want? I mean, you can't rely on the police department to be
No.
first responding all the medicals. They got better, more important stuff to do.
Right, and we're tying up police officers that may be needed elsewhere for,
The city needs to make the decision on what kind of money they're going to throw at this and what they want. Do they want us on all the calls? Do you want us on only the Delta, Echo, and Omega calls? I mean, what do you guys want us to do?
What's the township do for their protocol? What are they on?
They go on everything.
Everything.
They get paged on every call.
And you get that mass of people at certain things or not at others?
No, it's more that we don't get the response, and I don't have the exact numbers, but originally when we started, we were running about 50% of our calls we were getting first responders on. That kind of increased a little bit as time went on. I think we're getting more people responding. We've had a couple of newer members to that group, so that's helped. But we still have times we don't get any responders.
Is it your sense that there would be an all call if we wouldn't like that policy? Would everybody just come? I mean, I don't know how many are out there.
That's the way. I mean, that's the way it runs right now. I mean, you know, if you're a first responder, the pager goes off. If you're available, close enough, you go. If you're not available, or you know, you don't feel like getting out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning when it's 40 below out, then you don't go. So,
But that's with the, I just want to have an understanding, that's with the town or the village of North Hudson, the town of
Correct.
Hudson. It's not within city limits.
I mean, there is nothing within the city limits.
So I guess that's my first question is, it doesn't exist now. When we were in contract negotiations, we talked a little bit about first responders. You had said at that point that you saw that that would be a city decision, but that it wouldn't necessarily be needed within the city. Is that?
Right, and I think talking to Chief Willems too, you have officers that are trained at EMRs, you carry AEDs, they're doing the Narcan program. So truly a majority of his department is the first responders. And in almost every community that we respond to, right, we have law enforcement as a first responder. And some of those law enforcement agencies are continuing their their certified first responder training, and some of them are not. They're doing we go out and do their training. They tell us what they would like to have the training on, and we make recommendations on what we think is the most appropriate type of training. And those departments that do that continue to do that every couple of years. So that truly is your best first responder program, is law enforcement, because they're going to go to them higher acuity calls.
So those are priority calls for our department. I mean,
Aren't you always on the call first anyways, whatever call comes in?
I mean, I will never say always and never.
Well,
right?
you
Try to be.
But I mean, yeah, I mean, it just stands to reason that we're out and about and probably closer than anybody else. We're probably going to get there faster.
You gotta go. You gotta go.
I have to leave, yeah.
I gotta go.
I just want to, I don't want to interrupt the meeting, but I wanted to introduce Bridget Murphy. Bridget is our new operations supervisor. So she's going to North St. Paul tonight to do training for their department. So I just wanted to make sure you guys get the face with the name. And
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you have any updates that you can confirm anything, or?
I can give updates if you're ready for that.
Go ahead. Why don't we just start with it so you can hear as well?
Yeah.
Okay. So the hiring process, as I mentioned at the last meeting, that process was in place. We started advertising, I think, the week of that meeting, which was, I think, the week after the city made the decision. Our goal was to hire at least 7 full-time people in that first go-around, with a goal of 9 people. We did interviews on July 1st and 2nd. Of those 2 rounds of interviews, we made 6 job offers, and we had 6 accepted job offers. And then we did interviews last Thursday, and in that round, we picked up 3 more. We made job offers for 3 more, and 1 declined today. Wasn't able to move their family at this point in time. So that, to us, is that was amazing for us to see that kind of, I didn't expect to see that in the way this market has been. The thing that we really noticed is the people that we hired are all coming from established careers, and they're leaving a good job to come and work for us. So they all have experience. A number of them are certified critical care already. The downside to that is, if there is a downside, because of their established career, they're not just walking away from their job. So they need to give significant notice. One of them today needed to put in a 1-month notice. So we talked to you earlier in the week, Bill, and we said no one had to give a 30-day notice, but one called us today and they had to do that because they're shorthanded. They don't want to leave their place of employment short. So that's why we've not had this solid date on when we can get things up and running, because that was always the potential. If you hire students right out of school, they're eager to work and they'll come to work tomorrow. And this go around, everybody's got experience and work.
Do any of them have to relocate?
Yep.
How
So,
how far away?
There's one in Altoona, Wisconsin. I talked to him today. He's was packing up his house. He's moving to Woodbury. So there's a couple from down that way. One in Eau Claire. Anyways, that's the great news. The good benefit to this is because they're experienced, we can get them scheduled quicker than we could during our normal process. So our normal process, I think I've talked before, is 10 to 12 weeks to go through orientation. With these hires, they have years of experience. We don't need to teach them how to be a paramedic. They just need to learn our system. And 3 of them are coming from Alina, and that's probably one of the biggest complications or hurdles to a new person coming in to learn our operation. 3 of them have been doing it for many years. So that's the good news. So we're hoping that a lot of these people we can run them through, they'll go through our 12-week FTO program, but they will do a minimum of 80 hours as a third person, so they're not on the schedule. And then once they go through that 80 hours, if they've met certain standards, we can move them to a scheduled position. So that's the process that started. The first person started this week. Next week we have 3 people starting. Week after we got a couple more. So we didn't plan on them being staggered, but it's really helping us out. So that's where we're at on the hiring piece. Any questions on that?
Do you have a sense of any kind of date at this point through the hiring process? Or?
For a start date? So I think to be safe, again, because things are fluid and changing, and like today we found out someone has to give a month notice. I think we are safe to say September 9th is a solid start date. We could start earlier, but if we start earlier, we want to be respectful to the St. Croix EMS crew that we give them notice. Our goal is not to, call tomorrow and say, hey, Josh, we'll be here the next day. Thanks for your work. So we would give plenty of notice when we're ready to do that. So that's where we're at with that. The building, so we've selected a contractor to build our building up at the hospital. It will be located on the hospital property, south of the current emergency department. We met with the contractors, the architects. That same day, they came and met with the city. And the city made some recommendations on the building. That's going to delay it a little bit because we need to go to a steel type construction, and that's going to delay the order, getting that product. And so our original hope was we'd be in that building by February, but now the contractor's saying with these changes it could be April. So that's where we're at on the building. Questions on that?
What are your, so are you in need of space?
We are definitely going to be in need of space. I don't know the time frame on the ER construction project, but you know that is moving forward as well. And depending on where they're at, when they start breaking ground on the ER, we're going to get displaced where we're at currently up there. So we would need space for 2 ambulances and a crew and 2 crews when that happens, until our building is ready.
Oh. I think we'll have to cross that bridge when we get to it. Josh, anything?
That would be at that start date that your space need. You wouldn't foresee any kind of space need before then? I just want to clarify.
No, before September 9th?
Correct.
No, so on September 9th, to get that second ambulance and crew over here, there's no room at the hospital for us to do that. So we would need space from the city. And I know we would want to work with both legal departments to make sure we get contracts drawn up on that, and a price. So,
Do you have anything update or any questions?
Nothing as far as an update. Still, I mean, staffing is becoming harder and harder. The farther we get into this, and you know, the more that staff feels like they're getting strung along. So, as far as any end dates or anything else that's in the works, so it's hard. I have worked on the first responder program for the city. I'm also gonna have John Wohlers. He's on the fire department, but he's also one of the first responders. I'm gonna have him kind of eventually, hopefully, he can be the one to oversee it once it runs in the city. And then, but I just need some help.
Okay.
And someone helping me do it. If I can't be here, then he can be here. If John wants to meet, then John and John, 2 Johns can meet. If I'm not available, I just don't want to see this program get kicked off to the side and forgotten about. So I don't want to see it pushed on the police department either, as much sense as it makes, but getting a lot of legal issues with getting cops on, medically trained police officers on scenes, and something big happens, well, they're stuck there. They can't leave until an ambulance gets there, so, or somebody else that's medically trained, so.
Okay.
But, so John Wohler's back there. He'll start figuring stuff out with us.
Maybe the 3 can get sidebar and
yeah,
talk that through.
As far as any updates, I don't have any updates as far as just staffing my normal one. So
Thanks for your hard work, Josh.
Yep.
Scott. Just broke ground on the fire station. We ran into a little bit of an issue with some soil corrections that's needed. We're just working with the engineer now. They did soil borings and stuff prior, but you can't catch everything, so they're working with Zappa Brothers and engineering and architects and everyone. So it looks, at this time, we're just kind of waiting for how much we need and really what that cost is going to be, but we're still moving forward. And it's not, I met today with a construction company, and now it's not going to reflect any setbacks in time, so it's just a matter of kind of finalizing exactly what we're going to need to fulfill.
Okay, good. No questions? Jeff?
I don't have any updates.
No updates?
No.
Okay. Well, information, anything for next time, I will ask and I guess request that Melanie, we get our posted agenda 48 hours prior to every meeting now, going forward. So we don't have that mix up again either. Plus it gives us a little more time to read. I know it was a full moon, so I get it. Anything for the future agenda?
No, I think that about covers it, yeah.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody.